Friday I get my pay.
This is the Pete Anderson Trio. While I'm talking, this is Jack Maybe on keyboards, bass, and organ. We all live in Los Angeles, and we're glad to be here. We'd like to thank Val for bringing us up here. It's a good treat for us.
This is a treat for you.
Because I like to talk about guitar, and I like to play the guitar. So that's two things. And I like to travel, so that's three things. So I just about completed everything. So I thought I'd start with the telly, because I know that most people probably recognize me better if I hold a telly. And so that's sort of a sampling of, I don't want to say the way I used to play, because I played like that last night at the Poorhouse, but I'm on a rootsier, bluesier, complex chord path right now, but I know we would want to talk about that style of play. So first of all, before I get too deep, it doesn't matter if everybody's here a guitar player or not, but for the guitar players here, does everybody know the major scale harmonized? Do you know? Everyone understand the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5? The 1 is major, the 2 is minor, the 3 is minor, the 4 is major, the 5 is dominant, 6 is minor, the 7 is half diminished, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's it. That was a big key for me to learn that. That was huge when I was a kid, because I started very illiterate playing folk blues and jug band. I started on an acoustic guitar and was really an illiterate player into my mid-20s and started a real search. I grew up in Detroit and I ended up in Phoenix, and then I went to Los Angeles and played a lot of blues. I was playing harmonica and guitar, and I thought a major scale had a dominant 7th in it, so the major 7th just was like the wrongest note you could possibly play. You know, I never heard Robert Johnson or B.B. King or any of those guys use it, so it was just like, that's got to be a wrong note. There's no question about it. That said, I started on a quest to learn music in a lot of different ways, and because I was in Los Angeles at that time, there was, instructors and teachers and things like that, and the biggest, one of the hugest keys to me was finding the major scale harmonized. And I still work off that today, as even though it was the first thing I think I would try to teach anybody on an educational level, other than trying to teach them, 3 chords so they can, you want to go home and have instant gratification. That's the beauty of the guitar, is that it's possibly the most simple instrument. There's only 2 instruments we can accompany ourselves on. I mean, on this planet, this is so bizarre how complex of a world we live in, but is the piano and the guitar. It's kind of hard to sing and play chords on the saxophone at the same time, There's just only 2 instruments. It's totally amazing. I mean, you want to throw mandolin, banjo, and things like that in there, but you don't want to hear a banjo for a whole set or a mandolin. You just want to hear a guitar or a piano. That said, there's only 2 instruments, so it's an extremely simple instrument and an extremely complex instrument, depending on how far you delve into it. And I've devoted most of my life to playing the guitar. I still love it. I'm still searching, and I'm still learning every day. stuff about the instrument that it was like, why didn't that dawn on me a long time ago? Why didn't I think of that? Things like that. So I got to Los Angeles and wandered around and got the major scale harmonizer. I was like, wow, you mean there's rules to this? I thought like if you just played a C and you went to A minor, I just had to memorize that. I'd be in situations like, okay, what was that next chord? It was just like, it's always going to be the A minor, you know, and all the leading tones to get to the 4 and the 5. And over the last few years, I also got to study with Howard Roberts in the early days, right before he started Musicians Institute in the late 70s. It was called Guitar Institute of Technology. And then I actually went there for a year. I was playing clubs by then, playing honky-tonk bars at night and going and studying during the day. And this was probably the third day, every 6 months, so it was only a year and a half old. But Howard Roberts was there all the time, and we had great instructors, and Larry Carlton would come by, Tommy Tedesco would come by, a lot of great seminars, Pat Metheny, people that would be able to play and basically pass on information and stuff like that. So I got to study while I was playing country bars. So I was moderately an accomplished player, but I wasn't educated. And Guitar Institute of Technology gave me the language, and it really helped me as a record producer so that I could go and interpret from the artist to the musicians and talk about bars of 2s and on the and of 4 and what we wanted to do and complex chords and things like that. That said, even now, like within the last couple of years, I've really been awakening myself to playing whatever I want against the 5 chord. So I don't want to get too far up on the hill here if you're not there with me yet, but just as far as education and my continuing to learn, I never stop learning. So a lot of that opened up to me. I had a long career with Dwight Yoakam, and we made great music together, and not as a negative, but the music was triads. Bakersfield country is triads. There's a dominant 7, but it's really 3-note world. And when I left him in '02 and I started playing, I had an artist on my label, and I started playing more, I don't want to say Western swing, but it was more like Hank Sr. and Webb Pierce, but it was kind of revved up. And we went around the world with that for about 4 years, and that's what started that guitar, because I was using an Epiphone Joe Pass that I had kind of cannibalized and continued to morph into an instrument that I wanted to use, because I had changed my playing probably somewhat radically to most people that had heard me play with Dwight. And I went from hybrid picking to using no pick at all. So that was a big transition for me, and that was only in '04 was when that started. And then all the things that I had learned studying with Howard in that era, basically I went from triads to tetrachords. So a tetrachord is a four-note chord. So you have diminished chords, you have, raised 9s, flat 9s, major 9s, 6s, things of that nature, augmented chords that really wouldn't appear in the career that I had with Dwight. So I was 20 years playing this other style, and loved all of it. But now, since changing over, I've gone from triads to tetrachords and trying to make it as simple as possible. So first of all, before we do anything, is there any questions or anything about what we just played? Not what I just talked about, but this whole thing I was doing with working class. Do you guys got any questions? Want to know anything? You don't care?
I do. Could you review, just go through maybe a couple of the chords that you were playing?
Sure.
That were at,
Yes. I'm a whole step down. I know
nice.
nobody's holding the instrument, so that's okay, but I'm a whole step down, so unless you have perfect pitch, you're going to be frustrated. But anybody here with perfect pitch? Okay, so let's just say we're playing out of G. We're playing out of G. So Working Class to me is a hybrids root song, and it allows me when I play live to kind of play a little bit of my old style, the way I used to play. Or I guess not used to play because I just did it. But it's a lot of it's based off of country. And the chords, like the chords in that song, I didn't use too many sophisticated chords, complex. I mean, I like 13s. I play a lot of 13s. And if you're in some sort of a, you know how Albert King will play major minor? It sounds major, it sounds minor, but you can play major against it. He's not really playing, but he might be playing. He technically play a minor riff, but you can put the 3 in there if you want. You're not going to get in trouble. It's not a true minor. So I look at it the same way in root stuff. I mean, that's a pretty good, you know, T-Bone Walker, you know, 6/9 chord. And I like this one. It's got a little more pizzazz. It's got a 6 in it. It's a 13. And I tend to use this chord a lot, especially on the 1 chord in a dominant situation, in a blues situation, where, you know, I wouldn't be like, I mean, some songs are dominant right off the top. It's kind of kooky, but they would be soul, you know, like that stuff. But, you know, playing blues, it's usually, so I've used the 13 a lot, and I just like the way it sounds, and I like the grip on it for me, and it's a real strong 2-octave chord. We have an advantage as guitar players, because for piano players, that's a real stretch for them. Now, piano chords for us are very vertical chords, very vertical, because they can get notes adjacent and we can't. But we can cover a lot of ground. We can really set out a large block of music with a 2-octave chord. But that would be, that's 2 octaves. So that would be big for Jack to play. That would be a big chord. So consequently, I like those chords. It fills up a lot of space, and I've been using them a lot. And then there's a whole world inside those chords, flat 5 substitutions and the way to use them, and arpeggiating around them. So let's say the 13 on the 1 chord, and then that's all 4 chord stuff for me. So
Was that a diminished chord?
yes, so I could go to a 4, right? Got the 6/9, which is, you might play it this way or up here. But if I go here, and then and this one goes, wants to go. It says go home, like 5/1. Chords will give you, tell you go home, right, or back to the 1. So
that was a D diminished.
there's only 4 diminished chords,
Yeah.
but let's say this would be a G diminished.
Oh, so
I would
you weren't. I was just wondering if you were playing it on the 5.
No. That was all a one.
Got it,
That was all a
okay.
4 chord move. So I'm like,
Got it.
then go.
Got it.
Just went back home with it, but I never. It's not the 5. Then that's all 5. So that's a 5. That's a 5, which is this one, right? 6/9, and that's a dominant 7, right? So, like we know the upside down D, right? This is our D7, so it's like moved over. Do you guys know this chord? No. Okay, so this would be like a dominant 7 on the 4, but I use it on the 5 like a dominant. So this would be a D7. Different inversion of that. Kind of the one right below that. So like this chord, right? You all know that. That's a D7. So I'm going to play it here. And this is a great chord, a great grip chord that I've been using, so I can go. So it's right in my grip. So I'm going down, which is sort of a really kind of sick diminished chord. I don't really care. I just like how it sounds. And then I'm diminished. And then I'm diminished really going home.
Yeah.
So I kind of went 5/1, 5/1, if you wanted to know. That's how the movement sounds. Because this is sort of saying go home, and then that's home. So that's a pretty cool chord, and that can be on your 1 too. That's how we start the song. So we go. Now I'm playing the upside down D here, so I'm playing a G7. A little funny voicing for it. Like if you're playing, you guys all know the folk chord. If we're playing a D, you know that D7, right, upside down. I'm just playing it right here, and I'm putting this in the bass, so I'm making it a strong 5. So I start the song. On the 1. all what we just talked about. And I know it's a lot to go, oh wow, but it's pretty simple. Then see, I went to my 13, 1/2 step up, so. And that would be like if you're playing T-Bone Walker. Really like it. We all play that when we're playing the blues, right? 1/2 step up, and that's all I did, but I went instead of same chord. So I like the 13th chord. A lot of stuff with the chords, you know, and diminished gives you a lot of latitude, especially on the 5. They're very easy to move around, especially when you're on the 5 chord, you know, blues, or if you're in a situation where it's a little bit of a dominant tone, you know. I mean, it's probably not going to work on, you know, maybe it would on Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. I don't know. I probably could make it fit. So, does that sort of answer your questions? I love those chords.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. The thing that I always think about is, so with your day job, you know, how do you approach, like I can sit down and learn chords, right? Did you when you went from playing with Dwight,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of started increasing your vernacular in integrating these chords, did you have an approach to doing that? Did you just like, were you writing music in your head and sitting down? And
I was on a quest, that's for sure. I was definitely on a quest to get outside. How do I get out? Right. And there's a lot of different players that'll play out. And I've noticed a lot in listening to music. Music has become, because there's a lot of music schools, right? And they follow a lot of similar patterns, and they teach music a lot similar ways, that it's sort of started to get gentrified. So guys would go to these schools. I mean, there's so many more music. When I started playing guitar at my age, guitar was not considered a legitimate instrument. It wasn't a big band instrument, so you couldn't study it. I think there was only 2 schools, or maybe 3 in the United States, that would allow you that even had a jazz guitar program. You either had to study on piano, or you had to maybe get into one of these. I think USC and a couple schools had classical guitar that you could study, but they didn't offer it. It wasn't, you know, you had private lessons. The guitar is a hugely popular instrument, possibly the most popular instrument ever created. But that said, there wasn't a school for it, and it wasn't in school. So, you know, finding that stuff out has changed over the years, and now it's like, you know, every city has a Gap and you know, and one of those pretzel shops and a Foot Locker, and everyone has programs. But the people learn the music in the programs, and it's kind of like a big pattern the way they do it. And so it's a good thing, because a lot of people are learning music, but jazz and music per se was really handed down on the bandstand, right? All those cats. I mean, Charlie Parker, and, you know, every one of them, B.B. King, the blues guys, the jazz guys, it was all like, they'd stand by the piano. You know, really the theory was that these guys were playing, you know, Oh Susanna and Surrey with a Fringe on top, and just got bored playing it and just started jacking the chords around and going, oh, I can do this. And then the horn player would go, what's that voice? And they'd look over the piano player's shoulder, and bump, 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 and bass player, and really how jazz got born, you know, at the turn of the last century. So I think really it was based out of boredom, right? And they just started jacking the chords up, and somebody said, hey, that's pretty cool, you know? And so consequently, I really wanted to learn to get beyond the triad, right? And how do I get outside of the triad? Like the stuff that I did with Dwight. Now the music for him, you know, I did a few chromatic things through my career with him, but the majority of it was really triadal playing, major sounding playing, or dominant sounding playing, you know, where you'd have
There's some kind of crazy stuff in there, though.
Yeah, I played some wacky shit. I mean, like, that's chromatic.
Now, I'm gonna stop. The last thing I'm gonna say, like, that's the second solo in Little Sister.
Yeah, there's some wacky stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right.
What's going on there? That's not Bakersfield.
No, I invent a lot of shit. But you know, and to Dwight's credit, he encouraged it. You know, he was about as crazy as the rest of us were. You know, so he was like, "Yeah, really get out." You know, when his career broke, I had a choice. I was like, "Well, I could be like 10th in line, pretending to play like Albert Lee, or I could play like me." Because I was playing kind of the Albert stuff. I mean, nobody's going to be as good as the guy. So, but everybody in the clubs were going learning how to do that. And our first record broke, and it was like, you know, the majority of the early stuff with him, I was channeling Freddie King. Freddie King is all it is. He's not been in this, but Freddie had a lot of like little country feels in his playing. He played with metal finger picks, and was a finger picker per se. So I had kind of that thought, and it was like, that sort of works, right? And I actually played a B.B. King lick, and I forget, I was either Little Sister or Please Please Baby, one of those. But that's a B.B. King lick, and I played that at tempo. And I used to laugh when I'd hear it on the radio, because I was like, I got a B.B. King lick on the radio on the country station, you know. And so I always thought that was funny for me. And then I got into copying steel players. So I had a gig with a 4-piece band where the leader played acoustic guitar moderately well when he got the chords right, but we had a decent bass player. We had a great drummer. This drummer was from England, and he was an alcoholic, and he was at the end of his, yeah, at the end of his road. But he had come over here with Albert Lee in a band called Head, Hands, and Feet, and played with Joe Cocker. He played with the Everly Brothers. He had a lot of great gigs, and he was a great drummer. And so between me and him, I had a great year and a half with this band. But every intro, every outro, every solo was mine. That was just guitar and then acoustic bass and drums. And so if it was a country tune and I had to learn or kind of mimic the steel intro, I would mimic the steel intro, and I had a volume pedal, and you know, kind of really worked at playing steel licks. And those are things like, you know, with the volume pedal it worked, but I sort of stayed with them. I mean, the chicken pick, I had all that because I was learning it from Wolf, which is Hubert Sumlin stuff. But then I was applying that plus the James Burton stuff. There's a lot of chicken picking, and then it was like, oh, there's some steel licks, and those were like really just, I was fascinated by that stuff and how it worked, and I started to think about that. But that's all, except for that major. It's really a major sound. I'm doing 6.
Yeah,
it's all 6.
I think that's the first record I heard some bending harmonized 6.
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate a banjo roll?
Can I do a banjo?
Yeah, and you demonstrate what it is, because because a lot of guitar players do that. You throw that term out there, banjo roll, no one understands what it means.
Well, I call those trick licks. So sounds like a lot more is going on because I got an empty string, I got an open string and a hammer. So it just even like Foggy Mountain Breakdown. You can also do it so that would be it. I mean, Albert does it like. And that's all from steel players. Steel players, their fast licks are all with 2 fingers, not with 3 fingers. So all the fast stuff is really a 2 finger. But you want to get that, you want to get a little help, right? So you get, so I don't have to go. It's not like I have to pick every note. Get a free one. Then you start figuring them out. These guys aren't doing that in F sharp. They're not doing it. You know, they're doing it in G. They're doing it in. Doing it in D. Open strings. A or E. So they're A licks, D licks, D licks.
A
They're
lot of
all
octave
major
type things.
yes. the fun chords. But with the thing about Little Sister and the thing you're talking about, what I found was like when I was playing clubs, like sometimes I would play with girls and they were always in different keys. They're always usually a fourth above guys. And sometimes you'd end up in like E flat. It's like, you're gonna play bluegrass in E flat? Now the hillbillies do it, the bluegrassers do it, but they use a capo. They just, everything to them is... That's G. You want to move it? They just put the capo on it, and they play the same stuff. It's great, but that's what they do. So it's like, how am I going to play? They want to do, you know, Fox on the Run or something in E flat. Right? It could be very embarrassing for the guitar player. Take it. So I was like, so I invented this. I don't want to say I invented it, but I called it the brace, and I did an article on it a long time ago. But basically, I'm going to move it to a key that we can understand. But the reason was playing in bad keys for guitar players. So let's do it in C. All right. So we know we have C pentatonic. Right. We all know that, right? So what I did was I basically took this and I made a capo with this, my finger. So I'm playing, what I'm thinking is this. I'm thinking I got a capo here and I'm playing out of G. So that's what it was. That's born out of necessity. So I make it a dominant lick, and that's a cool little banjo trick right there. With you got that minor second thing going. See, we can't, but got that going. Slide it up. Open string. So they're all the C, D, E, A, you know, none are really the flat. B is kind of interesting. Pull some tricks in B, but not many people do fool around in the key of B. That's kind of a bad key. So what else were we talking about on that? Quiet crowd.
Your chord voicings, when you were demonstrate your chord voicings, but do you use like the root on a bass note, then you change the root down to a low?
I mean, the 13 has a root, you know, there's a root involved here. But, I mean, these chords, they're rootless, not ruthless, but rootless. You want to hear that. But you're hearing this. But that's the T-bone stuff. That doesn't have a real, that's the root there. 6/9, which is this chord, but I'm playing it here. Right, so this is a good chord too. So if you're like doing this, so you got this, which is this. Sixth. So that's a real good one to use. So yeah, there are chords that are rootless, and they're unique too. And the diminished chords depend on how you look at them. They kind of move around because there's only 4 of them, right? But they, you know, like. So obviously, some of these the roots aren't the same as the note, as the key is I'm in other words. So they're moving. But those 4 notes they're just the same 4, just keep repeating themselves. Augies too. And that's same one. themselves. And some sound better, you know, you got to use your own taste buds on that, but some sound better in some places.